Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 17, Zeros to Heroes, as the Lions take on the Blues, followed by the Crusaders in the last of the first three midweek games that guarantee everyone a start. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Right guys, welcome back once again, and we're up to episode 17. We're flying along. I'm joined as ever by Dan. Hey mate, how's it going?
Yeah, very good, mate. How are you? How are you feeling post-wedding?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm a little bit tired, but it was. We've just been to one of the most epic weddings at the Soho Farmhouse. Pretty amazing venue.
It was pretty incredible, wasn't it? It was they really thought of everything, and the fact it's one of our best mates getting married as well, obviously, just makes it that bit more special. But I'm glad to say he timed it very well to make sure that it didn't interrupt with any of the Lions matches. So that was just an extra bonus point for him as well.
Absolutely. And of course, speaking of Lions, that's why we're here. There will be another episode later on, which will be the England game. We were looking to keep the two separate. But of course, we've fallen a little bit behind with the Lions because they've had they're 3 games in now. We've obviously discussed the first one against the New Zealand Barbarians. That's out. That's episode 16. But today we're going to look at the next two sort of midweek games. It was the Blues last Wednesday, and of course this morning against the Crusaders. And it's important because it's the first 3 midweek games, and of course Warren Gatland had said all along that it was that everyone was going to get a test start. Everyone was going to get a start inside the first 3 games. So that's obviously now happened, and I think it makes it much clearer which direction they're going in as far as the tests are concerned. There's certainly, not all the questions have been answered, but there are certainly a few players who are looking like they might be inked in now.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. There's, obviously you and I have been sort of messaging sort of constantly throughout the match anyway. But yeah, as we'll go through, I think there's a few places that are almost dead certs, I would say, and a few more that are looking more and more likely. Yeah,
but as always, it's Lions, and things change, and there are still a number of midweek games to go. So there's still plenty of opportunity, I think, for guys to step up. But yeah, one or two positions looking fairly tied up now. But let's start at the beginning. We're calling this episode Zeros to Heroes, and the obvious reason for that is, of course, that the first game, the second game as it was, against the Auckland Blues last Wednesday, didn't pan out quite how we might have liked. The Lions lost 16-22 or 22-16. Never the result you're looking for from a midweek game in particular. But I guess when you're in these early stages, when you are guaranteeing everybody a start, and 42 people or whoever it is that he took on tour can't all play in the test team, there's going to be periods of slight uncertainty where the team isn't quite what you're looking for long term. And of course, it takes time for these guys who don't play together week in, week out to sort of bond and be able to kind of read each other, which is so important these days.
Yeah, I think we've noticed that. It's something we've noticed across both matches. Obviously, we'll sort of focus on the Blues sort of immediately, but just as a whole, the accuracy is not quite there, but it does seem to be improving. Yeah. For me, I like the fact that they've got better each match. That's important because apparently there's a fairly useful team they'll be playing on June the 24th. So they need to make sure they're playing the best rugby possible to stand a chance against those fellas.
That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, let's have a look at the Blues match then. So it was like you say, the loss was disappointing. I mean, we got to put our hands up a bit to the Blues. I mean that final try they scored was just absolute class, and was a joy to watch. Sort of Sonny Bill, obviously, sort of doing his stuff. That was clearly sort of a pre-planned move, but to have some of his skill set. And which he will, I would imagine, be a starter for the All Blacks. So it's good to get that taste. But the team was a mixed team. I mean, there was some people who probably are looking at test spots, but also plenty others who are really on the fringe.
Yeah, I mean, look, the first thing to note is that there were 15 changes from the game the week before against the New Zealand Barbarians. So, massive change up. Maybe the thing to do is why don't we discuss the team, which will hopefully kind of inadvertently get us talking about the game. Probably a good place to start in the front row. Of course, Ken Owens, the second captain for the Lions on this tour, the second Welsh captain for the Lions on this tour. But he had a pretty good game, I thought, at Urca.
Well, I think he played well. He did well in the lineouts. He had a solid game. Yeah, I think he's probably favourite for the starting spot following his performance. If we're basing it, if they were picking the test team tomorrow, and the reason I'd say that is I think Jamie George they're always looking at as an impact player, probably more than a test starter. So I would have thought Ken Owens might be the favourite to start. I personally would still like to see Jamie George start.
I don't think that's by any means is that inked yet. I agree with you. I think Ken Owens, perhaps the additional leadership qualities that he has, maybe give him the edge, and especially if you're looking at having two hookers involved on the match day for the test matches. We've talked about Best not having the best of games. Excuse the pun. And as we'll come on to when we discuss the replacements for this game, he didn't really do anything to change that in this game against the Blues. Ken Owens definitely looking strong to be involved in the 23 if we look at it as a match day 23 rather than the starting 15 for the tests. He of course was up front with Jack McGrath and Dan Cole, our own Viking Cole. Who I thought both they were okay. There was nothing I think especially exciting about what they did against the Blues. I think they did a job.
They did a great job in the set piece. In the loose, they weren't probably as noticeable as some of the other players have been. If you look at Carl Sinclair, Mako, they've probably made more of an impact in the loose, but both did a solid job. Yeah, and like you say, the scrum dominated. I mean, the Blues scrum isn't great, so
true.
It's not.
You kind of expect it, don't you? I mean, it's one of those areas that the Lions have actually been pretty strong since game one, and I imagine will be all the way up and including the test matches. It's more about what you do outside of that. So, perhaps focusing on the success of the scrum, particularly as you say against a team whose scrum is not their strength. Is not necessarily a sign of what's to come. But I suppose you can only do the job that's put in front of you, and it felt to me like they did it. Sitting behind them, of course, two more of our England boys in Marrow and Courtney Laws, who I thought both had a great game. I thought they looked strong in the row.
Yeah, I thought they looked strong. I do think that I don't know if I'd say great game. I thought they both played well. I think they've both put their hand up. They've got to be in consideration for the test spot. I think Marrow will definitely be in the 23, I would have thought, just because he offers so much. Courtney Laws, who I think last episode I inevitably put a curse on him and said he's my outside bet for a test starting spot. I thought he played well, but I don't think he sort of was outstanding to a point that he's really sort of said, I want that starting spot. Obviously, he'll get other chances. But, yeah, I mean, overall, they were pretty strong, had a good game. They backed up by a pretty solid back row as well, with Tipperick, Haskell and Stander. Tipperick, just a great player. I was actually debating before this whether I'd take Tipperick on tour. I'll put my hand up and say I'm wrong there. He definitely deserves to be on that tour, and he should be. And it's probably like him and the way Sean O'Brien played today. Maybe there will start being a few questions about that 7 shirt. I can't see a scenario where Warburton doesn't start still just because he's been named as captain, and I just think it might upset the sort of squad and the sort of harmony if Warburton doesn't start. But I think these guys have put their hands up.
I guess the other thing to remember about Lions tours of the past is that the test team rarely stays the same for all 3 tests.
Yeah,
and I suppose an awful lot depends on other things, such as the second row great example. You know, you've got Itoje, Laws, Alan Wynne and George Cruz are, in my opinion, the four favourites. Ian Henderson, I don't feel like he's, had that game yet.
He won't be a test player.
So if we look at those four, but if we look at those four and we assume that Jones, Cruz and Itoje are definitely involved in the 23, and if you're therefore assuming that Jones is your starter, we know that he is a leader, and so it's almost like if you've got a Jones in there, do you necessarily need Warburton for his captaincy? Likewise, Ken Owens, if he ends up being our starter, he's a leader. There's a bit of a pattern, isn't there, with Welsh players being the captain and Warren Gatland being in charge. But
yeah, I wanted to talk about this actually, because I'm not agreeing that the three captains should have been Welsh. I think the three players as a whole did well as captains, but I think perhaps Farrell could have had the armband today.
I mean, we've talked about Owen and captaincy before, haven't we? And I think my opinion remains the same. He's a leader anyway, and he has so much to do to run the team, or certainly the back line, the way that he does, and everything that he puts in. I almost think it's a waste giving him the armband, because he's going to be a massive support to whoever is wearing it, regardless.
Yeah, I see that. It was more like I wouldn't want him necessarily captaining the test side, but I just thought for a midweek game, I'm a little bit sort of cheesed off of the three captains being Welsh, but as players, they're probably deserved.
It's probably more just because we're the England Rugby pod and we're bitter.
Yeah, of course.
Anyway, we're digressing. We're moving on to the wrong game. So let's switch back. We've talked about the back row, Tipuric, Haskell, Stander. As you say, we're big fans of obviously all the England players. We're fans of Haskell. We wanted him on tour. Did he do enough? No, I don't think enough is probably the right word. He did a job. He wasn't on for a huge amount of time. I think he probably came off with a good 35 minutes or 30 minutes to go. Not by any means did he embarrass himself, I wouldn't have said, but I don't think he was outstanding. Stander, however, I thought looked really strong.
Yeah, Stander was probably the pick of the three. I thought Haskell did well. I thought he made a couple of breaks. Like you say, he wasn't given enough time. He will be given more match time, but I think he's got an uphill battle to make that test squad. Definitely. I mean, look, we know that he's a guy that can do it. We've seen him do it before for England. So, as long as he gets those opportunities to have another crack at the whip, who knows? And maybe just being part of a Lions team that has a bit more confidence, that's been together a little bit longer. Maybe that makes all the difference. But yeah, as you say, there's about 8 of them in the back row. And when you've got people like Itoje who can cover back row and Courtney Laws who can cover back row, and I'm sure there are others too. There's a lot of talent to pick from. So, it is unfortunate for the guys at the bottom of that list. And of course, you have to assume that he's at the bottom of the list based purely on the fact that he was a call-up replacement when Bill pulled out. Of course.
We shall see. The performance, I guess, is always going to make it difficult to see individual brilliance in a team in a game like that one, because at the end of the day, they didn't get the result. So it's always harder. You tend to focus more on the negatives in situations like these. But as you say, hopefully an opportunity presents itself again. So moving on, 9-10 combo of Rhys Webb and Dan Biggar. We always knew it was coming. What did you think?
Well, what was really interesting to me is actually, because obviously we were sort of in your front room watching this, and there just wasn't something... It just didn't quite seem to be as smooth as I thought it might be, and as smooth as I think sometimes it is with Wales. And you pointed out, actually, which I think was a good point, Rhys Webb does take that. His pass is slightly slower. He seems to wind up to make the pass.
Yeah, it's not an extra step, is it? It seems to be there's like a little sort of pause in the pass itself before he releases, and it feels like it holds the team up. And we said actually, because even Greg Laidlaw obviously came on. We'll talk about it later on. But when he came on, we instantly both recognised that it felt like the ball was moving quicker.
Yeah, and the thing I like about Rhys Webb, and where I think Rhys Webb will be good, is if it's a tight match or something, because he's a snarly and quite a hard little bastard, isn't he? So he's quite snarly, but in a tough game, if you brought him on, he would give them shit all day, which is sometimes good, but it's quite negative rugby. Like, I think selecting him would be sort of negative selection because I actually, after what we saw today, I'm not sure that it's necessarily even a point we need to discuss in depth because I thought Conor Murray was brilliant. But Reece Webb, to me, is a great player, a sort of tough lad. He marshals it well. He plays for scrum well. But he's not the go forward sort of attacking scrum half, which I think we probably could get elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree with you. Dan Biggar, Sexton had a pretty poor first game against the Barbarians. We both felt that Dan Biggar had a great opportunity. Not convinced that he stepped up. I mean, he was physical. We both said watching the game, we both said he just felt like he was a bit too overexcited. He seemed to kind of be really keen to rush in and be involved in everything, but he didn't marshal the game at all. And I felt personally that the team just lacked a Farrell. They lacked someone to just kind of control the game.
Why are we even discussing this? Owen Farrell is the starting 10. If he's not, I'm never watching rugby again.
Well, I mean, you say that we'll come on to that point as part of the next game because, of course, we both feel strongly that Farrell should be on the pitch, but there are potential question marks about in what position.
Okay, that's fair enough. But yeah, I think you're right. Biggar. I mean, he went off. He got injured. He took a knock. That's unfortunate, but. Regardless of that, I think we can probably sort of move on from that. I can't see he hasn't stood up enough to be considered as a test. Certainly not a starter, probably not a squad member just yet.
No, I agree, and I don't think the opportunity will arise without injuries. But we'll see how that goes. So the back five. We had our England boys on the outside.
Back five we're going for.
We're going back five. Why not? It's okay. I want to get through the Blues game because we lost it, and let's focus on the heroes bit of the next one. Back five was Nolan Daly on the outsides, representing England, of course. Henshaw and Payne in the middle. We've been waiting to see Henshaw. Payne has obviously had a crack in the last game, and then Halfpenny at the back. So to start with, I think let's look at the centres. So Henshaw and Payne. I felt it was a little bit like the first game.
A bit underwhelming. They did not really much happened in midfield. They didn't play badly. I'm not saying they had a bad game,
exactly. But it was just nothing particularly special that you can discuss about the performances. I think the centres are still quite. Depending on what format they go with and what the game plan's going to be going forward, the centres are still very open. We talked about JJ in the same way, I think, in the last game. It wasn't that he played badly. He just didn't do anything exceptional. And I think with the exception of Ben Teo, the centres so far have been left quite wide open. So then the back three, if you feel better with the back three.
It makes me feel a lot better, thanks.
So Nolan Daly. We both had massively high hopes. We know how good these guys can be. Well, it didn't really happen
work
for them, did it?
It didn't work for them. Jack Null, I felt sorry for because he's such a sort of honest player. He will put his hand up and he will put himself in any position. And really, he is the workhorse. Probably one of the hardest working wingers in world rugby. But he got caught out a couple of times. There's arguments to say maybe it wasn't his fault, but he did get caught out a couple of times, missed a couple of tackles. I hope he's not been written off just yet because he is a great player. But I think the one thing that sort of stood out for me is, especially against sort of Ione, who will likely be the All Blacks winger, he just maybe lacks that half yard of pace that perhaps a Watson has. And he doesn't necessarily maybe have the physicality of perhaps a North, although he is a strong little bugger, isn't he? I mean, he can make those breaks. But no, I felt a bit sorry for Jack Noel, but it didn't really work for him. Elliot Daly, again, didn't do anything wrong, but
it's quiet.
Unfortunately, we just didn't see much of him.
Yeah, we didn't. I want to see them, and I'm sure again they're another pair that will get another crack at the whip, but. It didn't happen for them in that game. I think they need another shot, a bit like Haskell. I think it'll be good to see them get another shot in a team that seems to have bonded slightly more and is perhaps has that winning mentality. running through it, and just see if that changes things for them. Because I think we'll come on to it in just a moment, but it feels like the wing, or it feels like the back three is starting to take shape, and right now they're not in that shape. So opportunities to perhaps change it slightly, but that didn't take them on this particular occasion. And then of course at the back was an interesting one, because this is a player that both of us felt probably shouldn't have been on tour at all. However,
we've been giving him a hard time, haven't we? We've been giving him a real hard time.
We have, but in fairness, that was based on the fact that, frankly, his form wasn't good enough to be on tour. However, once that decision had been made, it was on him to kind of say, all right, let me now kind of prove my case, prove why I'm here, and justify my invitation to come on this tour. And I think he did it. I think he did it well.
Yeah, he had a good game. He did have a good game. He was solid. He took his kicks. He tackled well. He's really put his hand up. And as it seemed, they were only ever considering two fullbacks. But that, after what happened today, that may well have changed.
Yeah, absolutely. Because of course Hogg didn't have the best of starts, and so Halfpenny had a real opportunity to put his hand up. But yeah, as you say, some changes in today's game means that there may be someone else on the radar of Gatlin and his selection team.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, Halfpenny played well. He certainly now is being considered as a potential test option. But we'll have to see other games and just make sure it's not a one-off. Okay, so yeah, looking at the subs, I mean, we don't really need to go into detail because they won't give him time. The only thing I think worth mentioning about the subs is Rory Best has not done himself any favours. In actual fact, I think he's probably put himself out of the running. That last line out, what the bloody hell was he playing at? He's a good player. He's a really good player. It hasn't worked for him this tour. And that last line out was just unbelievable. I just really did not know what happened there.
Oh, they just seemed to be asleep, didn't they?
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? I haven't seen anything yet that explains what happened there, but he seemed to throw it in when no one was ready, and it was the last play of the game. Yeah, you got to at least compete. I mean, the Lions didn't even compete their own line out, so.
Well, they weren't ready, and Rory Best just threw it. I was like, "What are you doing, mate? Like, yes, it's the last play, but you've got to compose, take your time, because whether you throw it in this second or wait another 5 seconds, the chance, it doesn't give you an extra chance to throw it in that 5 seconds earlier. But hey, never mind. I think, like we say, that's probably sort of ruled him out, unless something changes fairly drastically over the next sort of couple of weeks. But yeah, let's move on. This is the game I want to talk about against the Crusaders. This season, played 14, won 14. Real tough team to play against. Looking at the team sheet, it looks like what a potential test starting 15 could look like.
Yeah.
So the Lions had a strong team. Actually, before we even go into this, I just want to bring to you, what the bloody hell's wrong with Stuart Barnes? The guy has been just like, he referred to the Crusaders as All Blacks. He said it was Best who he said it was. I've got it now. He said it was Ken Owens who made that mistake. He's off his thing. I think he's been enjoying the New Zealand grape a bit too much.
The old Marlborough.
Yeah, he's. I don't know what's going on with him. I mean, I think the guy's a moron. But that was sort of by the by. It's just when I was watching it this morning, I was just sometimes like, mate, what do you want about? Shut up and don't pretend you hurt Kieran Reid. Everyone knows you didn't hurt Kieran Reid.
Including your co-commentator.
Yeah. Even your co-commentator on the game just basically said, "Shut up."
Took you down.
But yeah, let's look at the game today. Yeah, what a result. Crusaders played 14, won 14. Like I said, real good team. What's it? 6 All Blacks?
Well, it was the All Blacks front 5.
Yeah, and
they beasted them in the scrum.
They got taught, didn't they? They really did get schooled.
Which of course, I thought, Vunipola, Jamie George, and Tad Furlong was our front 3. That's a hell of a scalp for all three of them, both in terms of just what they achieved, but also in terms of saying to Warren Gatland, hey, whether you've saved us till now because you're already thinking it or not, we are three guys that need to be seriously considered. And of course, it's so big because it's a direct competition. He's looking at this and going, this is the same three guys that are going to be taking on their front three. So it's even more of an opportunity to stake a claim.
Yeah, they did well. Mako and Furlong were all three of them. All three of them were really good, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's Mako, Furlong, and Best as the starting front three. Because and actually they said after the game as well, Mako. It wasn't just what everyone before. The question marks about him have been about his scrummaging. He's proved that wrong today, and his open play. The guy for. Just, he's got, you expect someone his size to have a turning circle of the Titanic, but he's just quite a dynamic sort of player, great hands. I hope he's a test starter. I thought he did really well. I thought Furlong did well. And I thought Jamie George did well. And ably backed up by Alan Wynne and George Cruz.
Yeah, so, of the four that we've mentioned who are still in the running, Cruz and Jones looking like strong favourites possibly to start, and then a question of whether you get Itoje and Laws on the bench or just one of them. But they're the four, and as you say, Jones and Cruz doing a great job today in the row. Jones, of course, the captain, the third Welsh captain. We won't go into it again. We've already made our feelings on that clear. But I think, to be fair, looking at the team, I think he probably was the guy to captain this team on this in this game.
Yeah, it did make sense, I guess.
Then in the back row, a couple of new. Well, actually, it wasn't a couple, was it? Amani had a run on against the Blues. I think.
Blues,
but this was his first start, and of course, Sean O'Brien had his first involvement. I think
played well, didn't he?
And Faletau backing up his performance against the Barbars.
So at the start, when I said I think a few people have put their name on the team sheet, I think Faletau's one of them.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, we always sort of suspected, didn't we? We did say that Stander had a great game, but I think we said, didn't we, that he did have a strong game playing at 8, but probably putting his hand up for the 6 shirt rather than the 8 shirt, because I think Faletau just offers that little bit more. It's probably the experience of playing as an 8, rather than just as a back row player. And I think you do need an out-and-out 8 in today's game. So I agree with you. I think Faletau definitely putting down a strong marker. And looking likely to be the starting 8 for the test teams.
I think so. It wouldn't surprise me if the back row went, Faletau and, like we say, at 8 and Stander at 6. And then Sean O'Brien's asked questions. I thought he played really well today. I think his go-forward ball is better than Warburton's, so that'll be interesting to see. But I think Warburton may be slightly better around the sort of rucks and mauls. So we'll see with that from those guys. Moving on, the 9-10, I think I messaged you after about 5 minutes, and I just saying, this feels right, this looks right.
And it did, And, there were some changes, which we'll come on to, but that you're right, that first sort of 5, 10, maybe it was even 15 minutes, it just felt like these two needed to be there playing together. It just worked. Murray kind of marshalled the forwards, and was able to kind of capitalise on some, incredible set piece in both the line out and the scrum. And Farrell just ran the backs and just kind of commanded the game, and it just worked. That is the best way to describe it, isn't it?
Yeah, it did well. I mean, but what with Lance today, Conor Murray, you want starting at 9, and Owen Farrell, you need playing. Like, he needs to be the first name on that team sheet. He's such an epic player. Like, just today I noticed he almost had a bit of the sort of George Ford about him. Just held that ball a bit more. He was looking. He held the defence, gave just the guys outside him that bit more space, that bit more time, and it was noticeable.
Very square shoulders, a lot of contact in attack. Really kind of taking on the man and forcing them to commit. Which, of course, when you get it right, just opens gaps. And I mean, he opened up a gap for Jonathan Davies in about the first 3 minutes, and short of some quick thinking, I guess, by the Crusaders' defence. There was an overlap and an opportunity, and it just didn't quite pan out. But yeah, he definitely made a statement right off the bat, and as he always does, as we know he always will do. And I think the biggest thing that came from that is that he made he sent a message to Warren Gatland that said, wherever you put me in this team, it needs to be in the starting 15, and I need to be the first name on that sheet.
Yeah, he did, and he did well. I mean, even release, you saw Benko's the centre seemed to like playing with him as well. Tio had another really good game. He made a couple of mistakes, a couple of handling errors, but what he added that sort of null and voided them plus some. Ben Teo, I think, is looking good for a test spot. He's played well. He's probably been the player. Him and Falatal are probably the two players who have had the strongest tour so far, I'd say.
Yeah, it's not a bad shout. Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because not a lot of experience, but it seems to be working. That little bit of strength. I mean, let's move on to the changes that came in, because obviously this impacts a few things. So Tio began at 12. The centres were Tio and Davies, 12, 13. Of course, Jonathan Davies got a head injury fairly well. It's probably about halfway through the first half, maybe the second, maybe just before the halftime whistle. I can't remember exactly when it was, but he had to go off. And obviously, with limited options on the bench in terms of the centres, they had to bring Sexton on. Sexton's never playing centre, so Sexton went to 10, which meant that Farrell then needed to move out. And so it's either you put him at 13, which didn't really make any sense, or you put him at 12 and you move Tio out to 13.
But they did both, didn't they? They did both. They sort of changed it around a bit, which was quite interesting.
I think they started him at 13 and then they quickly moved him inside, and then he and Sexton moved around a bit within the 10-12 channel. But it'll be interesting to see what they go with, because this of course now, this was something that, was always on the cards, but it kind of felt like Warren didn't want it. We talked about it. He talked about Farrell as a world-class 10. It felt like it was very much a Farrell versus Sexton, until of course this happens and they're forced to do Farrell and Sexton on the same team. And it did work. I don't know whether it's what I want to see or not.
It's a tough one because Sexton played well. He did some damage repair. Did he play well? I personally think he played well because he had Farrell taking off a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and that's
from
probably a good analysis of the game. Farrell is so good at managing the game. It meant he didn't have to. He could just concentrate on making his hits in defence, making those late passes that put people in gaps, and that's great. I mean, it's what England do. It's why it works with Farrell at 12 for England. So yeah, it's because it was so strong, Murray, Farrell, 9-10 at the beginning, and then it worked with Farrell moving out to the centres. I don't know what I want to see. And of course, it's a question of the centres themselves. Do you then want a Tio at outside centre, or perhaps somebody else? Or, Davies was looking strong before his injury. We'll find out, I think it's tomorrow, the extent of the injuries. But, he was looking sharp, and he was looking like that. It could have gone on to be a pretty interesting game for him as well. So, maybe Tio Davies without the injury, and keeping Farrell at 10 would have been even better. And maybe we'd have finished a few more, because whilst it was a good scalp, it was only 12-3, and it was all penalties. There were no tries. The opportunities weren't sort of taken advantage of. So,
it needs to be, on that front, it does need to be more clinical. You can't afford. And like we say, a lot of that, just for the accuracy, the sharpness wasn't quite there. I think it's getting there. And like you said, going back to Jonathan Davies, he looked good. It's a shame he went off. I hope he's completely fine, and I hope he starts next game, because I really want to see him. And until we see him, and probably until we see JJ again as well, it's going to be hard to know, sort of discuss that Sexton Farrell part. I think it was Sean Fitzpatrick who said, maybe it wasn't him, but one of them, who said that just with the quality of both Sexton and Farrell, you want them both on the pitch. it's that this is going to be how this plays out over the next sort of week, 10 days is going to be really interesting. I'm really sort of intrigued to see
Absolutely.
what happens.
But of course, it throws up huge question marks for Ben Teo, because if Davies is fit and firing, and you decide to put Farrell at 12 and Sexton at 10, there's nowhere for Teo.
He may well be a squad player, because I think he's done enough, and I think they recognise sort of an Eddie Jones finisher. Do you want to know what's interesting is what works best for the Lions is Eddie Jones technique. Maybe he should have been the Lions coach, but that's because he's English. That's not taking anything away. Well, he's not English, but that's because he's English coach. But yeah, we've got the centres. It's hard to say, like we say at the moment, because necessity may change. But looking at the back three, George North, Liam Williams. Liam Williams had a slightly better game. I don't think he's cemented a spot. George North was quite quiet, actually. Didn't do anything wrong.
Wing is still wide open, which is good news for Noel and Daly. Because I think there's definitely no one is inked in there. However, Hogg, of course, went off.
That was such a shame.
Taken out by Murray.
Do you think it's just because Murray hates the Scots? Do you think that's what it was?
It may well have been. I mean, I was watching closely in the replay, and it definitely looked like Murray looked over his shoulder, and as Hogg went past, lifted his elbow. Although
laughed.
Some may say he was just trying to get out of the way. I'm looking forward to the Living with the Lions video where they do the fines for that particular incident. I think taking out your potential test fullback with an elbow to the face in about the first 10 minutes of the game is potentially going to be problematic on that front. But
I don't care how good a scrum half you are. That's still below the belt.
The good news the good news I think for the Lions, but obviously particularly for us as England supporters and as the England Rugby pod, Watson was brought on at fullback, which is something we've talked about both for the Lions, but also it's something we're looking forward to seeing from an England point of view. And I thought he had a great game at fullback.
He's and I said this to you earlier actually, but the back three I think is wide open, but I think Watson's got one of those spots, and whether that's wing or fullback, I think Watson at the moment has been the best of the back three.
Yeah, I'm backing him for Lions Test fullback. It's certainly for one of the tests. I just think, I think he offers something that Warren Gatlin has taken note of. I mean, I could be completely wrong. So. I don't think I am, but we shall see. So that was interesting, and obviously created a few problems in terms of the game plan, but they handled it brilliantly. And I mean, defensively, we were outstanding today.
Yeah,
we put them under so much pressure. This is a team, the Crusaders, who I think average about 4 tries a game in their 14 wins, no losses season. And they didn't score any tries. Neither did we, to be fair. But scoring tries is what they've been doing for fun all season. And the Lions just shut them down. Defense was just intense. It was quick. The line speed, defensive line speed was fast. We were in their faces, just constantly, and they didn't have any opportunities. And 1 or 2 little breaks, but we handled it. No one seemed to be rushing. And I think one of the big things for me about today was it felt like a team of 15 guys playing as a team. Whereas I think the last 2 games, we've mentioned it in both. We mentioned it in the last podcast. The last couple of games, it felt like individuals trying to stand up and get Warren Gatlin to take note. Whereas this felt like a team that wanted to do what it took to get a win. Yes, there were still individual mistakes. Yes, there were probably still a few situations where individuals were looking to get noticed. But in general, and I think Farrell plays a big part in this, it felt like the team was working together to get the result. I enjoyed that part of this game immensely.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it's the first time they're looking more like a team, and it's starting to come together. It's got really exciting. I mean, it was exciting anyway, but that's such a good win. I'm even going to ignore the fact that Farrell missed quite an easy kick. He's missed 2 quite easy.
Did
kicks.
He miss it?
I think so.
He wanted the ref to have a look upstairs few people wanted the ref to have a look upstairs, because I think the problem that we had from the view, because the camera was from behind the posts, is that yes,
you don't know exactly when it goes over.
There was times when it was inside, and then of course at the end it was outside. But at what point did it actually? They didn't show you the other angle. So I'd be interested, because he doesn't strike me as the sort of person that would appeal it. Like, I don't know, Owen Farrell he knows when he kicks the ball, he knows whether it's gone well or not. And the fact that he wanted to waste time and have the guy go upstairs and look makes me think that something made him think, I think that got over before it went outside. So, I don't know. As they said in commentary, from where he was, it probably should have gone through the middle and not been so tight on the edge. And maybe that's his punishment for not just nailing it. But, he wanted to make it more difficult, just because he's challenging himself.
He had a bet with Johnny as to whether he could actually hit the post. And he did it in the first game, and then Johnny said, "I bet you can't do that again."
Is that what it is?
Unfortunately, it went a bit high. That's the theory I'm working to.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, hey, look, we're picking at things here. Farrell was class today, and he's a class player. So he's in the team, and I don't. Anybody who says otherwise is an idiot. He's just too good. But yeah, it's got exciting, and I think the next game will be really interesting, because I'm intrigued to see the team. I don't know. What do you build on this performance and sort of work some more combinations? Do you give the guys, for example, JJ? Now, do you give them another chance straight away to put their hands up? I don't know.
I think you have to. It's the Highlanders next, and then at the weekend it's the Maori All Blacks, which is kind of considered an unofficial test. So I think you look at the Highlanders game as very much your midweek game, and then maybe come the All Blacks, the Maori All Blacks on Saturday. I think you possibly then start to try and put together something that looks a little bit more like a test side. So I think we may see another slightly weakened midweek side on Tuesday, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Of course, Warburton has had a bit of problems with his ankle. He'll be back to full fitness by then, so we expect to see him. I think it'll be a mix. There'll definitely be a few people who are potential test players. I would expect, but I think a few of the boys who maybe haven't had much opportunity will get that opportunity to sort of, particularly in places like we've said, on the wing and what have you, where and in the back row, where there are still options. I think there'll be the opportunity to make a statement. And someone like Courtney Laws probably needs another shot.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's going to be interesting, but yeah, I mean, I think that's probably we can probably wrap that up there. We just obviously wanted to sort of cover these two games, but it's looking good. It's looking promising. We're obviously on later to cover the England game against Argentina. I have got literally on pause right at the start, waiting to go. With 97 living with the Lions, which I'm going to spend my afternoon watching before the England game.
Nice. Always a good watch.
A great watch with my tuna and red onion sandwich, which I've just got from the deli. So it's a pretty exciting afternoon for me. God, I'm such a loser. But I'm so excited about this. So,
well, I tell you what we'll do. Obviously, as you say, we're back on later on for the England game. Tuesday is the next Lions game, next midweek game against the Highlanders. I think we probably will have an episode on that Tuesday afternoon sometime. We will put together our prediction for the Test team. The Test
Following
23.
Tuesday.
The Test 23. So yeah, for Tuesday's episode, the next in a few days' time.
Yeah,
we will have a Lions prediction for the Test match 23, and we'll see how close we come. Obviously, when the Test team is actually officially announced.
Yeah, I think that'll be a good time to do it. I think we'll watch the game in the morning, put it together, record, and we'll say what we think our team is.
Excellent. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening to episode 17. Last little bits of admin as always. Appreciate your support. Keep giving it reviews, ratings on iTunes. So important to us. Check out the website www.englandrugbypod.com, and of course all the social media is at England Rugby Pod. If you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. But that's it. That's it from me.
That's it from me too. But I'll catch you in a few hours, boss.
Definitely, we'll see. You will hear from us again a little later on. So enjoy. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys. Thanks. Bye.